My wife surprised me with something. I'll never forget. Emotional surprise story. I never thought a day could change my life so completely. My wife and I had been married for 7 years. And honestly, life had fallen into a comfortable routine. We loved each other, sure, but between work, bills, and the endless monotony of daily life, romance often took a back seat. I work long hours at a corporate job, and she's always busy managing the household and her own career. We had kids, a house, bills, responsibilities. The spark was still there, but over time, small gestures had replaced grand surprises. It was a Friday evening. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted, barely able to keep my eyes open. I expected the usual, a quick dinner, some laughter, and bedtime routines. But the house felt different that night, quieter. Somehow almost too quiet. She greeted me at the door with her usual smile, but there was something in her eyes that made me pause. It wasn't mischief exactly. It was a calm, serious intensity. The kind of look that makes you instantly curious and slightly nervous. "Dinner is ready," she said softly, but I noticed the way she hesitated, almost like she wanted me to ask more. I shrugged, tired, and started walking toward the kitchen. That's when I noticed it. The table was set differently. Candles, rose petals, a bottle of wine we had been saving for a special occasion. The kind of setup that screamed, "This is important." My curiosity spiked. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She smiled. "Just sit. I promise you'll see." I took my seat, unsure of what to expect. There was a stack of envelopes in front of me, tied together with a small red ribbon. "Open them one by one," she said. I hesitated. I didn't know what they were. Notes? Cards? Bills? My brain raced, trying to guess what she had planned. The first envelope was labeled, "A Memory from the Beginning." I opened it and found a small photograph. Us on our first date, standing awkwardly outside a little cafe in the rain. Smiles plastered on our faces, hands almost touching. I laughed, remembering that day. I remembered how nervous I had been, how she had made me feel instantly at ease. She watched me carefully as I held the photo, tears threatening to spill. "There's more," she said. I didn't know it yet, but this evening, this simple stack of envelopes would become the most unforgettable memory of my life. I picked up the second envelope. It was labeled, "The Hard Times We Survived." My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside were several handwritten notes, each one carefully preserved, each one marking a challenge we had faced together. The first note reminded me of the time I had lost my job. I remembered the stress, the uncertainty, and how hopeless I had felt. The note said, "I saw you worrying every night. I stayed awake too, thinking of ways to help, ways to remind you that we are stronger than this. And look, we made it through." I felt a lump in my throat. I had never realized she had remembered the countless nights I spent silently panicking, too proud to admit how scared I was. She had noticed. She had cared in ways I had completely overlooked. The next note referenced our first big argument after moving into our first apartment together. I remembered shouting, frustration boiling over, and her tears in the kitchen as we argued about money and responsibility. The note read, "I remember thinking I could walk away, but I stayed. Because you were worth it, and love isn't always easy. Love is showing up even when it's hard." I swallowed hard. She had captured everything. Every moment I had thought she had forgotten or dismissed was preserved here, remembered in painstaking detail. The third note referenced the birth of our first child. The sleepless nights, the chaos, the fear of not being good enough as parents. The note said, "I watched you with our child, completely exhausted, completely terrified, but still completely loving. That day I fell in love with you all over again." By this point, my hands were shaking. My eyes were wet, though I tried to hide it. I had never felt so seen, so understood, so appreciated in my entire life. These weren't just memories. These were affirmations. A reminder that all the struggles, all the arguments, all the exhaustion had meant something. Then she leaned closer. "There's one more envelope," she said softly. My heart pounded. I didn't know how much more I could handle emotionally, but I couldn't stop. I opened the last envelope. Inside was a small key, and beneath the key, a tiny note that simply said, "Your next adventure begins here. Follow the path I've made for you." I looked at her, completely puzzled. She smiled and handed me a folded map, carefully drawn. with little landmarks I recognized. Our first cafe date, the park where we had our first kiss, even the spot where she had first said, "I love you." "You have to follow it," she said, her eyes sparkling. "It will lead you to the surprise I promised." I was in shock. I couldn't speak. My heart raced. This wasn't just an emotional reflection. It was an experience. She had planned something extraordinary, something personal, something unforgettable. And I was about to discover it. I couldn't believe what I was holding in my hands. A key, a hand-drawn map, a trail of memories carefully planned by my wife. I felt like a child again, excited, nervous, and completely captivated. "Where do I start?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She smiled, pointing to the first mark on the map, our first date cafe. I grabbed my coat, the map clutched tightly in my hands, and followed her instructions. When we arrived, the cafe was quiet, almost empty. The owner greeted us by name. Apparently, my wife had arranged this weeks in advance. On our table sat a small photo album with pictures of that very night. Us laughing, holding coffees, shy smiles, and awkward glances. Beside it, a handwritten note. "Do you remember how nervous you were?" I remember. I wanted to keep that memory alive. I laughed softly, tears threatening to spill. It was perfect. Every detail had been remembered. Every emotion had been captured. We followed the map to the park where we had shared our first kiss. There she had placed a small picnic blanket, a basket filled with our favorite snacks, and a note tucked under a small rock. "This is where my heart knew yours, where everything began." I felt overwhelmed. Each stop brought back not just memories, but emotions I had forgotten in the rush of daily life. I realized how much thought and love she had poured into this experience. Weeks, maybe months of planning just to make me feel seen and appreciated. The path continued. We went to the park bench where she had first said, "I love you." She had written a tiny poem and placed it in a small envelope under the bench. She had even arranged for our favorite musician, a local violinist, to play softly in the background, hidden from view until we arrived. By now, my emotions were at a breaking point. I was laughing, crying, and smiling all at once. I felt seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just a surprise. This was a testament to the life we had built together. The good times, the struggles, the growth. Every stop on the map reminded me of why I had fallen in love with her and why I loved her even more today. Finally, we reached the last location marked on the map, our home. But it wasn't the home I knew. The driveway was lit with fairy lights, the front door decorated with flowers, and a sign that read, "Welcome home to your forever surprise." Inside, the house had been transformed. Candles lit every room. A path of rose petals led to the living room, where a large box sat in the center. I approached it cautiously, hands trembling. She held my hand. "Open it," she whispered. I lifted the lid and gasped. Inside was something I had dreamed about for years but never expected: tickets for a world trip she had secretly planned, with itineraries, hotel bookings, and even handwritten notes about little surprises at each location. She had planned it all, the timing, the destinations, everything. I sank to my knees, overwhelmed. I didn't know what to say. My wife knelt beside me and hugged me tightly. "I wanted to give you something you'll never forget," she whispered. And I knew she had succeeded. I couldn't move. I just sat there staring at the tickets, the handwritten notes, the months of careful planning she had poured into this surprise. My mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. I had expected a small gesture, maybe a simple gift. But this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I looked at my wife, tears streaming down my face, and realized something profound. She knew me better than I knew myself sometimes. Every detail, the places we had shared, the memories that mattered most, the little joys we had forgotten in the chaos of life, she had remembered. She had honored them. She had made them into an experience that was deeply personal and unforgettable. I don't even know what to say," I finally whispered, my voice cracking. "You don't have to say anything," she replied softly. "I just wanted you to feel what you mean to me. To remember that love isn't just in the big moments. It's in remembering the little ones too." I hugged her tightly. I could feel her heartbeat against mine, steady and real, reminding me that this was not a dream. That this love, the love that had grown through the trials, the laughter, the arguments, and the everyday life was alive and stronger than ever. We sat together in silence for a long time, simply holding each other, letting the emotions flow. I thought about our life, the early days of uncertainty, the moments of struggle, the joys of raising children, the quiet comfort of everyday routines. And I realized something. These moments, however ordinary, had always mattered. She had just found a way to remind me of that in a way I would never forget. Later that night, as we sat sipping wine and reminiscing about each stop on the map, I felt a wave of gratitude so strong it nearly overwhelmed me. I thought about all the ways we had supported each other, the sacrifices, the compromises, the small acts of love that go unnoticed. She had taken all of that and transformed it into something tangible, something I could see, touch, and feel deeply. It wasn't the tickets, the map, or even the careful planning that made it unforgettable. It was the thought, the intention, the love embedded in every detail. I realized that this was what marriage could be at its best. A deep, enduring connection that grows stronger with time, effort, and care. I looked at her, finally finding the words, "I love you more than I can ever express. This is the most thoughtful, beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "I love you too. Always have, always will." That night, I didn't just feel loved, I felt understood, cherished, and seen in a way that I had never experienced before. And I knew with absolute certainty that this was a memory I would carry with me forever. The night stretched on, but time seemed irrelevant. I kept looking at my wife, at the thoughtful surprises she had planned, at the care she had poured into every detail. I realized this wasn't just a gift, it was a love letter, a journey through our life together, a celebration of everything we had built. We spent hours talking, laughing, and crying together. I recounted memories she had included on the map, and she smiled as she listened to me relive them. Each memory brought back emotions I hadn't felt in years. Excitement, vulnerability, and pure, unfiltered love. At one point, she pulled me close and whispered, "I wanted you to remember why we fell in love in the first place. Life gets busy. We get tired. But love, real love, it's always here if we choose to see it." I realized how true that was. So often, couples drift, distracted by work, responsibilities, and the mundane tasks of life. But she had reminded me that love isn't just a feeling. It's intentional. It's effort, thoughtfulness, and remembering the small moments that truly matter. Then came the final part of the surprise. She handed me the key from the last envelope again and smiled mysteriously. "It opens the last part," she said. I followed her to the bedroom, where she had set up a beautiful display, framed photos from our life together, letters she had written over the years but never given me, and a scrapbook filled with memories of our children, our travels, our quiet moments. On the wall hung a simple sign that read, "Every moment with you is unforgettable." I couldn't speak. I sank to my knees, overwhelmed by emotion. She knelt beside me, holding my hand, tears streaming down both our faces. I felt gratitude, love, and awe all at once. I had never been this seen, this cherished, this understood in my life. I realized in that moment that love isn't about grand gestures alone. It's about thoughtfulness, attention, and care. It's about remembering, honoring, and celebrating the journey you've shared. And she had done all of that in a way I would never forget. Finally, I embraced her tightly and whispered the words that felt inadequate but true. "I love you more than words can ever say. This everything. It's perfect. I'll never forget this night or you." She smiled, pressing her forehead to mine. "You'll never have to. Because this isn't just one night. It's every day we choose to love each other." That night I went to sleep holding her close, feeling more connected than ever before. The surprise wasn't just about the tickets, the map, or the photos. It was about the love, thoughtfulness, and intention behind them. It was a reminder that even in the routine of life, love can shine brightly, and small gestures of care can leave the deepest, most lasting impressions. Years from now, I know I'll think back to that night, and it will always feel as magical as it did the first time. My wife didn't just surprise me. She reminded me of what love truly is, and that, more than anything, is a gift I'll carry for the rest of my life. The end.